The gavel hung suspended in the thick air, when every soul in that cursed drinking hole shifted their gaze toward the shadowy rear corner. A figure wearing a battered hat had lifted his work-worn hand, creating a hush so profound it could have halted a cattle drive within the Crimson Moon Tavern of Dry Gulch. The atmosphere reeked of pipe smoke, perspiration, and hopelessness. Clara Montgomery balanced unsteadily on the improvised wooden stage, her fingers shaking as she gripped the frayed edges of her sole remaining garment. At 19, with copper-colored locks that reflected the flickering oil lamps, she found herself displayed like merchandise to settle her deceased father's wagering obligations. The offers had climbed to $30 when Snake Eye Malachi flashed his gleaming dental work. Certain victory was within his grasp. Then that weathered hand appeared from the darkness. Ezra. Blackwood hadn't uttered a single syllable since entering the establishment half an hour prior. He'd claimed his customary position among the shadows, cradling untouched liquor while observing. The nightmare with those iron-colored eyes that had witnessed far too much suffering. The townspeople of Dry Gulch recognized him as the reclusive landowner dwelling 5 miles beyond the settlement. The broken man who'd lost his family in flames. 3 summers passed and never recovered. What remained hidden was how Clara stirred memories of someone precious. Snake Eye's battle-scarred features contorted with fury as he pivoted to identify his challenger. Spotting Ezra lurking in that dim corner, venomous laughter erupted from his throat. This criminal mastermind orchestrated every dishonest transaction in their community. From manipulated gambling to extortion schemes that kept decent citizens cowering behind barricaded entrances. "Well, look here," Snake Eye drawled, his words slicing through the hazy atmosphere. "Appears our phantom farmer wishes to participate." Ezra rose deliberately, his towering frame uncoiling like someone who'd dedicated years to cultivating soil. With raw determination, his sun-beaten face revealed nothing, yet something behind those eyes caused the room's atmosphere to turn arctic. From his jacket, he withdrew a leather coin purse, the metallic sounds echoing through the newfound stillness. $50, he declared, his voice rough from isolation, but carrying the authority of absolute certainty. The gathering stirred restlessly. 50 represented more currency than most witnessed in half a year. Clara's eyes expanded with wonder. Hope battling terror as she grasped that this mysterious individual might represent salvation or something infinitely worse. Snake Eye's confident expression dissolved. He'd anticipated claiming his prize for 30 without resistance. Now this silent cultivator had doubled the stakes while every criminal present observed their leader's response. What nobody realized was that Ezra Blackwood concealed far more than money in his history. And Snake Eye was about to discover precisely how lethal a quiet man could prove. Snake Eye's digits drummed against his weapon belt as he studied the farmer who'd just challenged his authority before his own followers. In Dry Gulch, respect came through violence, not currency, and this hermit had just humiliated him publicly. 60, Snake Eye countered. Sharply, but Ezra responded instantly. 65. Murmurs cascaded through the crowd. 3 months' wages for ordinary men, tossed around carelessly. Clara's knees threatened to buckle watching these two bid for her like property. Her destiny dependent on numbers shouted in a room filled with killers and wanderers. Snake Eye's jaw tightened. He controlled the mines, brothels, even the sheriffs. Authority, but lacked $75 to waste on one woman while his men watched. His reputation rested on fear and brutality, not losing bidding contests to dirt farmers. That's when Jeremiah Cross, Snake Eye's lieutenant, whispered something that transformed the outlaw leader's scarred face into a cruel mask of satisfaction. "Here's my proposal," Farmer Snake Eye announced loudly. "We'll settle this the Dry Gulch, weigh you and me in the street immediately. Winner claims the girl, loser meets his maker." The saloon exploded with excited roars that surpassed any auction blood. And gunpowder always attracted crowds in their forsaken settlement. Men rushed toward exits, eager to witness what they assumed would be slaughter. Ezra's hand shifted to his hip, and observers noticed the worn holster beneath his coat for the first time. Instead of expected fear, something else entirely filled his eyes, cold calculation that made seasoned criminals retreat. "I didn't come here for killing," Ezra stated quietly, his voice penetrating despite the commotion. "I came to purchase that girl's liberty." Snake Eye's laughter resembled fingernails on slate. "Boy, the only freedom in Dry Gulch flows from gun barrels. You can pay with lead or gold, makes no difference." But Clara detected something in Ezra's tone that others missed: genuine conviction. This wasn't about ownership or desire. Stranger would risk his life for her freedom without even knowing her name. As crowds pushed toward exits, Clara caught Ezra's gaze momentarily. What she witnessed wasn't the hunger she'd learned to fear in men's expressions, but something reminiscent of her father before gambling and drinking destroyed him. Protection. Snake Eye already headed streetward, his hand resting on his pearl-handled revolver, confidence radiating from every movement. In 3 years terrorizing Dry Gulch, he'd never lost a gunfight. Quick draw, steady aim, and zero conscience kept him alive and powerful. But as Ezra followed toward those swinging doors, Clara noticed something that made her heart race. The farmer's right hand was missing 2 fingers, and the remaining ones trembled slightly, brushing against his weapon. How could a crippled hermit possibly outdraw the fastest gun in 3 counties? The dusty street outside the Crimson Moon became an arena as news spread like wildfire through Dry Gulch. Windows flew open, doors creaked, and within moments, half the town gathered to witness what everyone assumed would be Ezra Blackwood's funeral. Snake Eye strutted into the street center, spurs chiming with each step, savoring attention. He'd killed 12 men in gunfights, their names carved into his Colt's grip like trophies. Today would add a 13th. "Final chance to retreat, farmer," Snake Eye called mockingly. "Drop your money and crawl back to your cornfield. Maybe I'll let you survive another planting season." But Ezra stepped into the street with the steady pace of someone who'd already accepted whatever fate awaited. Afternoon sunlight cast lengthy shadows between the combatants, and Clara watched from the saloon entrance, her heart pounding frantically. Old Pete the blacksmith shouted from the crowd. 20 says the farmer doesn't even draw." Laughter rippled through spectators but died quickly when they examined Ezra's expression more carefully. Those steel-gray eyes held no fear or hesitation, only the cold focus of someone who'd walked this path before. Snake Eye noticed too. An uncertainty flickered across his features for the first time. "You look familiar, farmer. Have we met previously?" Ezra's voice barely rose above a whisper, but in the sudden silence, every word carried like thunder. "Fort Apache, 7 years past. You rode with the Crimson Ridge Gang." Color drained from Snake Eye's face. Fort Apache had been a massacre. 30 soldiers dead, supply train robbed, witnesses eliminated. But one witness survived, a young cavalry sergeant who'd feigned death among corpses and later identified 3 raiders to a military tribunal. "You're him," Snake Eye breathed. "The soldier who testified?" Ezra's damaged hand moved closer to his weapon. "Sergeant Ezra Blackwood, 5th Cavalry. I remember your expression when you shot my commanding officer in the back." The crowd sensed the tension shift. This wasn't merely a gunfight over a woman anymore. This concerned justice, vengeance, and old debts that had festered like infected wounds. Snake Eye's confidence cracked. If this was the same sergeant from Fort Apache, then stories about his marksmanship weren't exaggerated. Military training, combat experience, and personal vendetta created a deadly combination. "Draw when ready," Ezra said quietly, but Snake Eye hesitated, his mind racing. A fair fight suddenly seemed suicidal, and survival mattered more than reputation. His eyes darted to his men positioned around the crowd. Clara saw him give an almost imperceptible nod. That's when she realized the terrifying truth. Snake Eye never intended to fight fairly. Clara's scream pierced the air as she spotted Jeremiah Cross raising his rifle from the opposite rooftop, but her warning came too late. Gunfire cracked through afternoon silence. Ezra dove sideways as the bullet meant for his back tore through wooden posts behind him. The crowd scattered like startled livestock. But the former sergeant rolled smoothly and rose with his Colt already drawn. Sending a shot that dropped cross from his perch with lethal precision, Snake Eye cursed and reached for his weapon. But years of comfortable living had slowed his draw. Ezra's second shot shattered the outlaw's wrist before his weapon cleared leather, sending the pearl-handled Colt spinning into dust. Should have fought honorably, Ezra said, advancing with his gun trained on Snake Eye's chest. But the nightmare continued. Two more of Snake Eye's men emerged from the general store, rifles already aimed at Ezra's back. Clara watched in horror as the trap unfolded. They'd transformed the entire street into a killing field. Then the impossible occurred. Doc Patterson, the town's elderly physician, stepped into the line of fire. Enough, he shouted, clutching his medical bag. This man. Doc's right, the sheriff declared, voice shaking but determined. We've lived in fear too long. Snake Eye clutched his shattered wrist, blood seeping between fingers as he witnessed the rebellion unfolding. You fools. Kill me and my brother's gang will reduce this town to ashes. But Ezra had heard enough. He grabbed Snake Eye by his vest and hauled him upright, pressing the gun barrel against the outlaw's temple. Our brother's dead hanged for murder in Tombstone last month. I was there watching. The lie flowed so smoothly that even Clara believed it, but she recognized the calculation behind Ezra's eyes. He was buying time, breaking Snake Eye's psychological hold by destroying the myth of his invincibility. Snake Eye's remaining men looked uncertain now, rifles wavering as they realized their leader was finished and backup wasn't coming. Doubt. Their boss's reputation for protection, they were merely common thugs facing an armed and angry town. Here's what happens, Ezra announced, his voice carrying to every street corner. You and your men ride out of Dry Gulch permanently. In return, I won't tell the territorial marshal your location. But Clara could see something in Snake Eye's eyes that terrified Hertha, desperate cunning of a cornered animal. Even beaten and bleeding, he remained dangerous, still calculating his next move. And that's when she realized the horrible truth. Ezra's mercy might destroy them all. Snake Eye's broken laughter echoed off buildings as he cradled his shattered wrist. You think this ends here, soldier boy? You think mercy makes you heroic? Ezra kept his weapon steady, but Clara could see the conflict in his eyes. Kill Snake Eye now and become a murderer before the entire town. Let him live, and the outlaw would return with reinforcements to slaughter everyone who'd opposed him. The girl, Snake Eye continued, his voice gaining malicious confidence. Sweet little Clara there. You think saving her makes you noble? But you don't know what Daddy Dearest really owed money for, do you? Clara's face went ashen. Don't listen to him, Ezra, please. But Snake Eye pressed forward, blood flecking his lips as he grinned. Tell him, darling. Tell him about the Chinese workers your papa sold to the mine owners. Tell him about the families who died in those tunnels because of information he provided us. The words struck Clara like physical blows. Her father's gambling debts hadn't involved cards or whiskey, they'd been payments for betraying innocent people to Snake Eye's operation. Men, women, even children had died because of her father's greed. That's why she's here, Snake Eye wheezed. Blood debt. Her daddy sold souls, so now his daughter pays the price. That's frontier justice. If you were Ezra, what would you choose? Execute a wounded man to protect the town, knowing it would make you a killer, or show mercy to someone who would definitely return to murder everyone who helped you? Tell me in the comments. I need to know which side you'd choose because what Ezra decided next would haunt him forever. The former sergeant's hand trembled slightly as the weight of choice settled on his shoulders. Behind him, he could hear townspeople whispering, their newfound courage already wavering as Snake Eye's words sank in. Doc Patterson stepped closer. Son, sometimes mercy is just delayed justice, and sometimes justice wears mercy's mask. But Clara had heard enough. With tears streaming down her face, she walked into the street and stood between Ezra and Snake Eye. If my father's sins condemn me, then I'll bear that burden. But I won't let you become a murderer to save my life. Her voice carried across the street with surprising strength. My father made evil choices, but that doesn't make this man's mercy wrong. Ezra Blackwood risked his life to give me freedom I don't deserve. I won't let that sacrifice be poisoned by more killing. Snake Eye's eyes narrowed as he realized the girl was ruining his psychological warfare. Noble words from a walking corpse. But Ezra had made his decision. He lowered his gun and stepped back, his voice carrying finality. You have 1 hour to collect your men and ride out. If I see your face in this territory again, mercy won't be an option. Snake Eye's smile was pure venom as he struggled to his feet. You just signed everyone's death warrant, farmer. Sweet dreams. But as the outlaw stumbled toward his horse, Clara noticed something that froze her blood. He was heading straight for the building where the town's children were hiding. If you've been following this incredible journey of redemption and family, please subscribe to the channel because stories like this deserve sharing with everyone who believes in second chances. The schoolhouse, Clara whispered, horror dawning on her face. All the children are hiding in the schoolhouse. Ezra spun around just as Snake Eye kicked open the door of the small wooden building where Miss Henderson had taken shelter with 8 children during the gunfight. The outlaw's good hand held a derringer he'd kept hidden in his boots, small but deadly at close range. New deal. Farmer Snake Eye shouted, using his body to block the doorway. I take 1 kid with me as insurance. You follow. They all die. You let me ride out peacefully, and maybe I don't paint these walls red. Through the open door, Ezra could see tiny faces pressed against the far wall. Tommy Wright's little sister Sarah, the Patterson twins, the preacher's boy who couldn't be more than 5 years old. Miss Henderson stood before them like a protective shield, her face pale but determined. You're a special kind of evil, Ezra said, his voice deadly quiet. Snake Eye laughed, backing deeper into the schoolhouse. I'm a survivor. Something you're about to learn isn't the same as being a hero. The townspeople had gathered behind Ezra, but none dared move closer. One wrong step, one sudden movement, and innocent blood would spill across the schoolhouse floor. That's when Clara did something that stunned everyone. She started walking toward the building. I'll go with you, she called out. Take me instead. Leave the children. Take me and ride out. You get your prize, they get their lives. Clara, no. Ezra grabbed her arm, but she pulled free. This started because of my father's debts, she said firmly. It should end with me paying them. Snake Eye considered this, his scarred face twisting as he weighed options. The girl was worth more than a random child, and she'd come willingly. It was tempting, but then young Sarah Wright, barely 7 years old, stepped out from behind Miss Henderson. Mister, you're hurt real bad? My mama says hurt people sometimes do mean things because they're scared. The innocence in her voice cut through tension like a blade. Even Snake Eye hesitated, staring down at this tiny girl who showed him more compassion than he'd received in decades. Sarah, get back, Miss Henderson whispered urgently. But the child continued, her small voice unwavering. If you're scared, you can stay for supper. Mama always says nobody should face their troubles on an empty stomach. For just a moment, one impossible, fragile moment, something human flickered behind Snake Eye's cold eyes. Oh. The little girl's words had found a crack in the armor of hatred he'd built around his heart. That moment of hesitation was all Ezra needed. The former sergeant moved faster than anyone thought possible, his damaged hand steady as rock as he fired a single precise shot. The derringer flew from Snake Eye's grip and the outlaw collapsed, clutching his shoulder. But as Ezra rushed toward the schoolhouse, he didn't notice Snake Eye's final act of spite pulling. The pin from a small stick of dynamite he'd kept hidden in his vest. If I can't have her, Snake Eye wheezed, nobody can. The hiss of the burning fuse cut through air like a death sentence. Ezra had maybe 5 seconds before the dynamite turned the schoolhouse into splinters and corpses. Everyone out now, he roared, diving through the doorway. Miss Henderson didn't hesitate. She grabbed the nearest children and shoved them toward windows, while Ezra threw himself at Snake Eye, trying to reach the dynamite. But the wounded outlaw clutched it against his chest like precious treasure, his eyes wild with the madness of a man determined to take everyone with him. 3 seconds. Say your prayers, Snake Eye whispered through bloody teeth. Clara appeared in the doorway, took one look at the situation, and made a choice that stopped Ezra's heart. Instead of running, she lunged forward and wrapped her arms around Snake Eye's torso, pinning the dynamite between them. "If you want to kill children, you'll have to go through me first," she said, her voice steady despite the terror in her eyes. 2 seconds. Ezra's mind raced through impossible calculations. He couldn't reach the dynamite in time, couldn't pull Clara away without setting it off. But maybe, just maybe, he could change the direction of the blast. 1 second. With strength born of desperation, Ezra grabbed both Clara and Snake Eye and hurled all three of them toward the corner where the schoolhouse is. Thick stone foundation would absorb most of the explosion. As they hit the ground, he twisted his body to shield Clara from the blast. While Snake Eye's eyes went wide with realization that his final act of revenge was about to kill him too, the dynamite exploded with a deafening roar that shattered windows 3 blocks away. Smoke and debris filled the air as the corner of the schoolhouse collapsed, burying the 3 figures under a pile of splintered wood and broken stone. For a terrifying moment, silence hung over Dry Gulch like a burial shroud. Then came the sounds of coughing, crying children, and people shouting as they rushed toward the wreckage. Doc Patterson reached the debris first, his medical bag already open as he began pulling away boards and chunks of mortar. "Here, they're here." Clara emerged first, coughing and covered in dust, but miraculously alive. Ezra had taken the worst of the impact beam across his back and blood trickling from a head wound, but he was breathing. His body had created a protective pocket that saved both their lives. Snake Eye wasn't so fortunate. The man who had terrorized Dry Gulch for 3 years lay motionless beneath the rubble, his reign of terror finally ended by his own weapon. As Doc Patterson examined Ezra's injuries, Clara knelt beside the unconscious farmer who had sacrificed everything to save her and the children. But when she reached to check his pulse, her fingers discovered something that made her gasp. Hidden beneath his shirt was a small, faded photograph, and the face staring back at her was one she recognized, though she'd never seen it before. The photograph showed a young woman with auburn hair and gentle eyes identical to Clara's own. On the back, in faded ink, were the words, "My beloved daughter Emma, may you find the happiness I couldn't give you. Love always, Papa." Hands trembled as the truth crashed over her like a flood. This wasn't coincidence. This wasn't random kindness from a stranger. Ezra Blackwood was her father, the man she'd been told died when she was 3 years old. Doc Patterson noticed her shock as he bandaged Ezra's head wound. "You found it, didn't you?" "I wondered when the truth would come out." "You knew Clara," whispered the old doctor, nodded sadly. "I delivered you 19 years ago. Your real name isn't Clara Montgomery. It's Emma Blackwood. When your mother died in that influenza outbreak, Ezra thought you'd be safer with her sister's family. He changed his name, moved away, told everyone his daughter had died with his wife." Ezra's eyes fluttered open, focusing slowly on Clara's face when he saw her holding the photograph. Tears began streaming down his dust-covered cheeks. "Emma," he whispered. Clara asked, her voice breaking. "Why did you let me believe you were dead? Why did you let me grow up thinking I was alone?" "This guy." Ezra struggled to sit up, wincing from his injuries. "'Cause I was broken after your mother died. After what I'd seen. In the war, I wasn't fit to raise a child. The Montgomerys were good people then. I thought you'd have a better life. But you've been watching me," Clara realized. "Haven't you? All these years?" He nodded slowly, from a distance. "When I heard what happened to the Montgomerys, when I learned about the debts and what Snake Eye planned to do," his voice hardened. "I couldn't let my failures destroy your life twice." Round them, the townspeople of Dry Gulch were rebuilding both their schoolhouse and their courage. Snake Eye's remaining men had scattered to the winds after seeing their leader's fate. And for the first time in years, children played in the streets without fear. Sheriff Morrison approached the small group, his badge glinting in the late afternoon sun. "Ezra, the territorial marshal, wants to speak with you about Snake Eye's operation. Seems there's a reward for information about the Crimson Ridge gang." But Ezra wasn't listening. His eyes were fixed on his daughter, 19 years of regret, and love warring in his expression. "Emma, I know I don't deserve forgiveness. I know I can't undo the years I stole from us. But if you'll let me, I'd like to try being your father again." Clara looked at this man who had risked everything to save her, not because she was a stranger in need, but because she was his greatest treasure. The father she'd mourned was alive, scarred and haunted, but alive. "My name is Clara now," she said softly. "Clara Montgomery died in that saloon when you raised your hand. But maybe Emma Blackwood can learn to live again." As the sun set over Dry Gulch, father and daughter walked together toward the small farmhouse. On the edge of town, ready to rebuild what had been broken and discover what they'd both thought was lost forever. Now, click on the video on the screen because the next story carries something you can't explain, only feel. And when it ends, you won't be the same. Click on the video.